Hello, all you beautiful, lovely people. Hope y'all can hear me well. I'm trying to mic out on these headphones. Fudge stick. Sorry, hit my knee. But yeah, no, I was just gonna go. I know I've been posting a while. School's been busy, and honestly, I'm just a lazy person. Need to get better at it, but it's hard to balance taking a bunch of AP classes and you know going to school, going to work, working two jobs at the moment, taking care of animals. I just got a lot going on. But yeah, I hope y'all having an amazing night, day, whatever you're watching. It's, I think, pretty late tonight. But I was feeling energetic. I was like, I might as well spend some time just talking on here. But yeah, today I was gonna go over presidents, government corruption. By the way, this is all my personal opinion. If you don't personally agree with anything I have to say, you can always turn off the video. Just walk away. Do anything but really get mad at me because at the end of the day, it's kind of your problem, not mine. I'm just sharing my opinion. But yeah, I don't mean to hate on anybody's favorite president or anything like that. I just kind of want to go over where I believe the U.S. government, where it became publicly evident that it's not necessarily for the people, and we don't have, we're not the great USA as everybody likes to think that we are. And I think that it kind of became evident that this was reality when I like to say it starts around the Vietnam War, but get into that right now. Yeah, I'll start from that point right there, Vietnam War, go all the way up to Bill Clinton, because I don't know too much about President Barack, or not Clinton, Bush. Sorry, honestly, I get the Clintons and Bush confused because it's the same people. Who am I here to lie? The same people. But yeah, no, Bush, go all the way to Bush Junior administration. Stop right there. And yeah, it's just my personal opinion on where I believe the U.S. government turned wrong, or became evident the U.S. government was for people. Hope y'all enjoy. But yeah, we'll start off with the Vietnam War. I kind of hate to get right into it, but it's another way. Uh, Start off by the way, sliding up the middle a little bit before we get serious. Joke of the day. Probably I've heard this, but why don't skeletons ever get mad? Because nothing ever gets under their skin. Ha 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 ha. I know. Save that one for someone that hasn't heard it, because they'll always give you a dumb look and be like, it's my favorite thing about dad jokes, but your servant's intro. Sorry, getting off topic. Or not. But yeah, let's see. Give it till 20, and then I'll just show that's where it starts. All right, let's get right into it then. Yeah, no. So Vietnam War. Basically, if you don't know much about the Vietnam War, best way I can sum it up is that it was a war that we should have never been in. The U.S. government should have never gotten involved in that war. Really shows how bad the U.S. government is as just people in general. You know, the whole excuse or the whole reasoning behind us getting involved in the Vietnam War was a fear of the domino effect, which was a fear that if one country falls to communism, the rest will. So we fear that Vietnam fell to communism, all the other islands near it would also fall. So communistic leader, right? And so through this belief system, we came up with sorry, my cat's over there. But yeah, we came up with the right excuse to go ahead and get involved, send 500,000 troops, I think, under President Eisenhower to Vietnam, and kind of just, get wrapped up in that messy, icky mess. Yeah, I think that's what I was looking for, icky mess. But basically, the Vietnam War was a civil war taking place between North and South Vietnam, where Northern Vietnam had actually won its independence from France, and South Vietnam was South Vietnam. Vietnam as a whole had won their independence from France. North Vietnam was trying to convert to communism because the ruler at the time, I think Ho Chi Minh was his name. He believed in China's Confucianism, which, by the way, I don't necessarily disagree with Confucianism. I think it's a good way to look at society. Let's see, what else did he put? Just believed in communism as a whole, right? Which scares people, and they're like, no, right? So North Vietnam had converted communism because the true definition of communism is really the government's for the people. It's not its own powerhouse or its own entity. It's basically there in place for the people, which would have failed because China, I think China would have eventually, would have made it. The whole reason communism has failed under China is because China's, sorry, I'm just getting away, but China has always taken the economic and or has never taken the economic aspect of communism. They have always taken the social. They basically used communism as an excuse of suppressing the people, and they actually haven't built a government that was based for the people. It's just about building up their country and letting the people suffer. That's why communism has failed. Um, but true communism is the government's there for the people. They just provide for the people work around the government, right? So North Vietnam had converted to communism. South Vietnam was going to have a democratic vote to decide whether they convert to communism or go democratic, right? Because North Vietnam was, basically where the leader, a bunch of like military powerhouses, I guess, and people that freed their independence from France lived. South Vietnam was where they had all their factories, and where a lot of people lived in poverty, but also a good amount, not a good amount, a small percentage of these people lived in wealth and in money and in riches, right? So what ends up happening is that the rich people end up saying, "Hey, let's have a democratic vote instead of just going to communism because communism means we don't get money, our money's just gone, right?" And so what they do is they tell the poor people that they're going to have a democratic vote, then realize that the poor people outnumber them, so they're like, "We don't like this, so let's just stick to democracy." And what they actually did is that they contacted the U.S. government. They're like, "Hey, like, we're going to follow communism if you don't help us. Can you please give us some aid?" So basically, it was a civil war where the South Vietnamese people were suppressing their citizens, which or we call this the Viet Cong, and then the North Vietnamese people were basically just trying to save the people in South Vietnam from being suppressed by rich people, because that's what free enterprise and democracy is. But from here, I think it becomes very evident once JFK gets assassinated, because if you haven't looked into that, that's a whole conspiracy on itself. But if you don't believe there was some third party involvement in there, then maybe you're looking at the wrong case, because the evidence is kind of there. It's like right in front of our faces, right? But JFK gets assassinated, which weirdly, his vice president, I think, LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, LeBron James Jr., he was in a plane already getting put into presidency, which, by the way, they hated each other. JFK and LBJ hated each other. The only reason that he chose him as a vice president was to gain Democratic votes in the southern states, because he was a southern racist, and JFK needed that. JFK wasn't necessarily a racist man himself, didn't have any prejudice, but he needed to have that image to gain votes. It's politics. It's what politics is. But yeah, so they were always going at each other's throats. So was JFK's little brother and LBJ. But yeah, so he was doing campaigning in Texas, gets shot, assassinated, about all that. But the crazy part about JFK's assassination is that he was actually planning on pulling out. He was going to pull out a week after his assassination. Oh no, he had planned to pull out all the troops out of Vietnam, right? I think it was a week after assassination was his initial plan, his initial date. But he gets assassinated. That fails. Sorry, this is where I get confused, or it's where I get confused. He received a transcribed message from the northern Vietnamese people, telling them that hey, South Vietnam's suppressing our people. They're trying to get us out of here. We're just trying to liberate our people, right? And he's like, hey, this isn't our war to fight. So he's like, let's go ahead and pull our troops out, and then boom, pop, dead, right? That's how it happens. You try to do something good, they don't allow it to happen. But JFK gets assassinated. Lyndon B. Johnson takes over the presidency. He starts a whole new ordeal of plans that were meant to help ghettos, reform, lower income areas, reform, really, really black neighborhoods that were destroyed by white supremacist groups. Because if you know anything about black history at the time, black people were doing better during segregation than they were, after segregation. They honestly started building their own communities, started having their own police force. That's what the Black Panthers were. They started doing kind of things on their own because they realized that, hey, like, if we're not going to be united, I guess we're going to do it separate, right? And the U.S. government didn't like this, of course, matched everybody together. But like bad stuff happened, like the Ku Klux Klan. There were a bunch of cities, black cities that got burnt. So these were like ghetto lower income areas now that he had plans to reform and rebuild. Right. The whole reason that his new order had failed, it's basically a New Deal on steroids. I don't remember what it's called at the time. Remember, it's the New Deal on steroids. Um, it had failed really bad because he had overfunded the Vietnam War because he believed that he wanted to be the greatest president of all time. He didn't care you know about race or anything like that. He was a big racist, but he didn't necessarily care about you know being a racist while he was president. He's like, I just want to go down as the greatest president of all time in history books, right? But he believed in order to do this, he would have to do everything better than JFK did, and he believed that one of the key things that JFK was messing up when this is what they say, that he believed that one of the key things was the Vietnam War, and that's why he overfocused it. I think that someone above him, you can say whatever you want to say, Illuminati, hierarchy, big corporation, told him, hey, we need you in the Vietnam War, and that's why he took so much control and had such a big impact in the Vietnam War. But yeah, OBJ basically escalates the Vietnam War, sends more of our troops there, starts fighting more, and it becomes a bigger thing. And by the end of this, he had realized that uh, he had realized that he had failed as a president because he had overfunded the Vietnam War and overfocused on it, right? So from here, by the way, the Vietnam War, y'all should look into that. It literally sounds like going to hell. Like, like the Vietnam War was the first war where we had a draft. But the thing about it is that a lot of people were being drafted were people from lower income areas. Since if you went to college right out of high school, you didn't get drafted. But if you didn't have the money to afford to go to college, guess what? You're going to war, buddy. You're gonna go out there. You're gonna go kill some men, whether you like it or not, man. And it's like it's literally a war where people went out there and they were just shooting at each other. You're shooting someone that you don't even know what they're saying to you, man. You don't know why you're shooting them. You're just out there to survive. And this is why I say it's evident that this war was not for the people. If you look at our military strategies and our military tactics, we had something called hill captures, which, by the way, the Vietnamese people, geniuses. Amazing military tactics. They had tunnel systems all throughout the Vietnam force to get from North Vietnam to South Vietnam and to hide from troops. So we had this warfare style, which, by the way that we would tell if we won a war would be by counting bodies. So it's essentially who killed more people. Did more Americans die or did more Vietnamese people die? And our troops would just get sent out there like toy soldiers to die. They didn't care. It was a sacrifice that they believed was righteous, which I don't think was righteous. It wasn't. You're telling me we needed to lose soldiers for a country that was fighting for its freedom? That doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, it was basically just getting sent out there, being told what to do, being told to kill people, and you had to survive 6 months of a draft in order to survive. And a lot of people that went back into the draft or went back into the war, the whole reason they did was because what I think the biggest fulfillment from the hippie movement was that whenever they get back home, the hippies were like, love everybody, peace for everybody, except for you soldiers, fuck you. It's basically what they said. Like, you'd come back home as a soldier fighting for your country. That usually when you fight for your country, you have pride because you're fighting for your country's freedom and for what your country represents and stands for. Whenever you come home, you realize that's that's not what you're fighting for, and the people are treating you like shit because the war that you're fighting in is shit. But it was either that or go to prison for 5 years, 6 months in war or 5 years in prison. Most people chose war, I guess. But yeah, this is where the hippie movement kind of fails, and this is where I think the hippie movement went wrong. And this is where it went wrong in multiple ways. But I think part of it was the fact that there were fake hippies out there. People just using it as an excuse to do drugs, experiment, and have a fun time in college, quote unquote fun time. But I think the true hippies are the people that are still working at farmers markets, flea markets, thrifter people that you just look at and they're cool. They're sitting there, they have hand knitted stuff. They're small business owners, they're entrepreneurs that don't worry so much about the money, but worry more about the product. These are our true hippies, man. They're probably. Let's see, 40, they're probably in their 60s now. Fucking cool ass 6-year-olds. I hope I can meet one. I hope I can meet one and just talk to them, man. But yeah, hippie movement filled right there. Yeah, basically you go back to Vietnam, it's war, hill capture, that's what it's. Sorry, I get off track. But yeah, capturing the hill was basically a military strategy where our goal was kind of take over a hill. And the Vietnamese people, and the Viet Cong, and the North Vietnamese people would be at the top of the hill, right? And so our soldiers are just running up the hill, running up the hill. They're just getting gunned down as they're running up. And it's like our whole goal is to take that hill. And the funny thing about it is, we'd spend weeks on weeks on weeks and trying to take a singular hill, get to the point where we drop bombs on our own people. They'd call in air missiles, and if you got the location slightly wrong, or the Vietnamese people were smart, they would bait us to call an airstrike or something like that. And as soon as our planes, helicopters, anything would fly over, they'd go underground, so it really just harm ourselves. We were out there literally killing ourselves. But yeah, people running up, like, the whole goal was to take the hill. But the funny thing is that the Vietnamese people had holes in the hill tunnel systems that, like, if we were to get up there and actually take the hill, they just drop in the tunnels, and we wouldn't know where they'd go. They'd just disappear, be gone. Close off that tunnel passage, and they're gone, man. And so I think it's just the dumbest thing ever for us to send our soldiers up there to die, and then, sorry if y'all hear me rustling. But yeah, send our soldiers up there to die, and then come back. My hair looks funny, by the way, sorry. But yeah, let's see. Vietnam War, right here we get into President Richard Nixon, which some people call him, one of the greatest presidents of all time because he was a great diplomat. But this is where I also like to argue and say that he had to be a bad dude to do some of the good diplomatic things that he did. First of all, President Nixon was one of the most corrupt presidents where he just did things for his own personal gain or for his own personal benefit. He used to record every single conversation that he'd have on people in the White House, like over a tape recorder. That way he'd have blackmail on them. You catch them saying something wrong, you can use it against them and get them to do whatever you want. This is how he eventually gets caught with Watergate, where like he used the FBI and CIA for his own personal gain. Eventually, he gets caught in this. Get into that right now. Let's see what else did he do. Pretty sure he used to take taxpayers' money to fund his own real estate. Just nasty stuff like that. This guy doesn't sound like a good guy, right? Well, guess what? He's considered one of the greatest presidents by many because of his diplomatic relationships with China and Russia. He was one of the first presidents to ever create peace with Russia. He poked the sleeping bear. He went to China. He opened up trade relations and opened up economic prosperity within the U.S. and China. And then he went to Russia and shook hands with the president at the time and like kind of had a peace order. But and in my opinion, for you to be able to go to somebody else's country that literally had, because by the way, the Russians and the Chinese people, they had their people kind of starving, living in poverty, absolute poverty, where they couldn't afford to eat food or anything like that. They were just not good people, right? And so for you to be able to go up, shake their hand, share a drink, share a laugh with them, you have to have some similar common interest, some similar end day goal. I feel like the end day goal was benefit me, not benefit the people. And I think that's why he was such a great diplomat, because he didn't care about the people, he cared about himself, and that's what he did. But yeah, eventually he began the way he got elected. By the way, this is what I see, it's awful guy. The way he got elected, by the way, was by saying he'd pull all the troops out of Vietnam. What he actually did is, I'm pretty sure he'd pull about 12,000 troops per month. Which, if you do the math, it takes about 8 years to pull out all their troops, which is 2 terms, I guess. Guess that's what he was planning for. But yeah, so it was basically saying he would pull out the troops, but he signed up something that said we'd pull out 12,000 troops per month, which wasn't that much. It was either 12,000 or 1,200, one or the other. And eventually kind of lied to the people. Eventually he gets caught in the Watergate scandal, which was a scandal where he got reported for using the CIA to gain information on his Democratic opponents in the next presidential election, so he could win. And eventually, he gets caught for this. He used ex-CIA members. He didn't use current CIA members, but I think one of them snitched on him or something like that. And eventually, they raid the White House, find his tape recordings, and he's like, "Oh shoot! Like I'm about to get arrested," because that's a federal crime. I'm pretty sure it wasn't long that I'm pretty sure that's a federal. He would have gotten arrested for that. That would have been a big impeachment. But he was like, "Oh snap! I'm about to be impeached and arrested." So what he actually does is he resigns as president. He gives his position to General Ford. And then he quite literally played us. He got away with it. And then General Ford gives him a pardon that tells him, like, hey, by the way, the only person that can pardon another president, which a pardon means that all your crimes are excused. You're white clean, right? So only person that can pardon a president is another president. So Ford gives him a pardon, and he's like, oh, snap, like. Or he knew this was happening. You can pull up photos of Richard Nixon leaving the White House, and she's like getting onto the helicopter, throwing up peace signs, throwing up deuces. He's just like, you know, he played us, man. Like he got away with it. That's literally what was his mindset. Like, hey, I got away with it. Y'all didn't get me for anything. Y'all won't get me for anything. I'm free. Yeah, he eventually gets away with that. Then next comes in General Ford, which I'm pretty sure Nixon Ford. Yeah, pretty sure Ford doesn't do much as president. You know, he kind of was just there to pardon Nixon. By the way they say that he excused Nixon's pardon was saying that it would have teared the country in half having a president go to trial and be impeached. It would have just divided the people so much, which you know may have been fair for the time period. But I mean, we got to be better than that, guys. We're really gonna let this guy get away with doing so much bad stuff just because he, you know, opened them. He created peace within a country that was starving its people. He went over there and he had a drink with them, and hung out with them. Like we're better than that, guys. But yeah, Ford didn't really do much, or that I remember. Probably did. He did some stuff, but just, and nothing stuck out to me, I guess. From there we get to President. I think President Jimmy Carter. Okay, Jimmy Carter, nicest man alive, as he was known. He was called the nicest man alive because he didn't necessarily do everything for the benefit of the American people. He did it kind of for the benefit of the world. He did some stuff that kind of, I forgot what he did. I think he gave Panama like something. I don't know. But he just did stuff for people. He didn't do it for the benefit or the sake of the U.S. He was like, you know what, let's help the world, guys, which I like that, but I get why it failed. You know, eventually the people realized that he was too nice. They realized that he wasn't really doing his job as president, and they kind of decided to go a different way, right? And they decided to meet right in the middle between Nixon and Ford, right? This is where they get to Reagan with Reaganomics, man. By the way, Reagan was an actor before he got elected as president. To me, that is kind of weird, man. Like, how do you go from actor to presidency? And was he really president, or was someone kind of filling there if he's an actor? By the way, look at the president of Ukraine. He used to be a comedian too, before he was president of Ukraine, which I find weird. Like, I don't know. I think it's a weird step to go from being a comedian to being an actor to being something like that to go straight into presidency. And it's weird. But yeah, Reagan. What did Reagan do? Reagan believed that the best way to get rid of Russia was to overfund our military. Sorry. We had to overfund our military. Basically, the more technologically advanced our military would get, the scarier it'd be for some. Because remember, we were in the Cold War at the time, right? Just a space race. What's a weapons race, technology race between us and Russia, right? But his belief was that if we could, or the Soviet Union, Russia, his belief was that if we could basically fund our military and get our technology so good that they couldn't even, they'd be scared of attacking us. So we wouldn't have to worry about that, right? So this is where you get to the idea of Reaganomics. His idea for funding our military, or for where the funding for that military money would come from, would be from big corporations. He believed that the more lenient you are, this is where Reaganomics comes from. That's why I think it's the worst thing that could happen to America. I think that's where a lot of the issues that we have nowadays with big corporations and how much control they have of our government kind of really begins with Reaganomics. But yeah, he believed the more lenient you were on big corporations, big companies, the more money they would bring into the economy, because the more they would want to set up their business in the U.S., the more they set up factories in the U.S., the more they pay their workers, the more tax rates they give them, the more money they have to give to the workers, the more money that their workers have, the more money they have to spend in other places. It's like a cycle in the economy, right? Well, Reaganomics eventually ends up failing because big corporations realize that they could get cheaper labor in third world countries, so they end up setting up their factories there and going, screw you, U.S. We're gonna go somewhere to like Thailand and just set up a big sweatshop. Basically, what they did, and that's how Reaganomics failed, right? Reagan also he got our military insanely good. By the way, some of the technology that we developed in the '80s from Reaganomics is still like. A lot of the technology our military uses to this day is based off of the technology that we developed in the 80s. Like China can't even make stealth planes. We made that stuff in the 80s, 90s. That is insane to me. Like that has to be aliens. I ain't even gonna lie, man. Like that is some crazy stuff right there. But but yeah, Reaganomics gets into the idea that if we fund our military, we fund our military so much, it will eventually dismantle, communist countries because they won't be able to keep up for manpower, right? You're the strongest country in the world, then no country's going to want to, mess with you because you're the strongest, right? Well, this eventually ends up working, which, kind of gets rid of the Soviet Union, Russia, um, turns them into Russia, gets rid of the Soviet Union, and yeah, it didn't happen until after his presidency, though. From there, we go into President Clinton. No, not Clinton. Sorry, I told you I get them mixed up. Bush Senior. Bush Senior is where we get to see how good the military stuff that we got from Reagan was, which was insane. Because if you look at what happens at that time, uh, we get involved with one of the countries that we definitely should not have been involved with, which is I think Iraq. Yeah, it's Iraq. And so basically, what happens is that Iraq and Iran are at war, and we're basically funding both sides of the war because it's money. All the U.S. cares about is money at this point because of Reaganomics, and we're in heavy debt because of our technology, I guess. Heavy debt to who? It's a question for another day. Um, yeah, so we basically fund both sides of the war, hoping that or knowing that Iraq would win. Yeah, I want to say Iraq. Knowing that Iraq would win. Eventually Iraq beats Iran, and Saddam Hussein is like, oh snap, I'm like in a lot of debt. So not only the U.S. but multiple countries like Russia, a bunch of different places, right? They eventually built the fourth strongest military power. They were the fourth strongest military powerhouse of the world at the time, right? It's pretty strong, I think it was U.S., Russia. I want to say China, but I don't want to say China. I feel like it was someone else. But yeah, and then Iraq, right? And so eventually, he takes over Kuwait and is like, you know what? It's like Kuwait. Kuwait is, by the way, like where the big oil thing came up. Kuwait is like I think 80% of the U.S.'s supply in oil, and so he believed that if he took over that, he'd have big control of oil, which meant more money for him, which meant he could pay off the debt, right? And so what ends up happening is he takes over Kuwait, thinking that the U.S. isn't going to attack him because they just gave him a bunch of big toys and big weapons. It's like, oh, they can come try to test me, but I have a lot of military gear from and so the Clinton basically gives him a 90-day warning. You get out of Kuwait, or we're gonna go to war, or we're gonna get y'all out of Kuwait. And he's like, no. So 90 days goes up. It was the most one-sided war in world history. If I had to say, I think we lost like maybe 500 troops, and they lost like 500,000. But it was basically like stealth planes flying over. You're sitting there, because you're looking on your radar to see if anything's coming overhead of you. Machine gun or military arsenal in the middle of the night. Then, boom, something flies over, bombs dropped on you, gone, right? That's the kind of war we had in Kuwait. It was just like, people were just dying left and right, but on their side, not really our side. Eventually, Saddam gets out of here. There was an assassination attempt on Clinton Sr., and from Saddam, but eventually gives it up, goes back to Iraq, and by the way, Saddam, he's considered a really bad ruler or a bad person because he ruled his country with an iron fist. He gassed his people. He did awful things to his people, which I don't believe were right. But if you look at the whole country of Iraq, the whole reason there is such conflict there is because it's actually a region built of many different religions, nationalities, ethnicities, and a bunch of it's a mixing pot, right? And if you throw a bunch of people that don't necessarily agree with something, and what's a good analogy? If you throw a bunch of chemicals in a fire, what's gonna happen in that fire? You don't know. It might turn off, it might kill the fire, or it might just blow up. And Iraq was one of those situations where it just blew up, right? And so that's why he ruled with an iron fist, because a bunch of different people with different ideas, they would have killed each other if he didn't, hurt some of them. It's weird. But yeah, that's why he ruled with iron fist. So eventually there we get into Clinton. Yeah, we get into Clinton after that, which is the dot-com era. It's whenever technology, Wi-Fi, all that kind of came into the picture. And our economy just, boom, skyrocketed after that, right? It's basically, if you invest money into technology, into, Wi-Fi, into technology stocks, you were rich on it, right? And this is why Clinton is considered such a great president because of his just our economic prosperity at the time. But in reality, this was due to Reaganomics because by this point, big businesses had realized that hey, like that's what the U.S. is good for. It's a powerhouse for our big corporations and setups. And we were good at manufacturing at the time, manufacturing steel. We were good at building skyscrapers, so we came over here. We built tall buildings. They set up offices in those tall buildings. The real estate industry, I guess, blew up too a little bit, but but yeah, no. So corporations come back to the U.S., set up business here. They start funding our economy. And Bush, Clinton. After Clinton comes Bush. Which, by the way, if you look at that election, I I think it's a crazy election. It comes down to the state of Florida. It was an election between, or let me get to Clinton. Sorry, I'm moving too fast. Clinton, eventually they try to impeach him because of how much good publicity I guess the Democrats were getting because of his economic prosperity due to Reaganomics. It wasn't really his growth. They try to impeach him for having sex inside of the White House with Monica Lewinsky, I think. But you can look at the whole ordeal. He basically says that he only got some sloppy toppy in the White House, and he goes under oath, says that he didn't have sex, and they're like, well, why does she have your children on her dress, man? And it's like they caught him red-handed, and he's like, well, that's not my definition of what I call sexual intercourse. I was just getting some sloppy choppy, whatsoever. But yeah, this is the whole Monica Lewinsky case. They didn't impeach him with that, but it kind of hurt Democrats a little bit. And whenever Al Gore goes to run for presidency, it comes down to one state. It's between Florida. By the way, at the time, the cousin of George W. Bush Jr. had was the president or governor of Florida, and had gone on to say something like, "There's a phone call between them that goes basically, yo, cousin, I promise you are gonna win this election. If you don't win this election, I am not governor of the state of Florida, basically." And if you look what happens, they recount the ballots, they recount the votes. A lot of times it happened. It was a whole span of like 2 months where Al Gore is like eventually like, no, this is a violation of my civil rights. Let me take this to the Supreme Court. But thanks to some good politics Reagan had played before he left office, he had left a couple Republican people in the Supreme Court. So the ruling, and I think it was 9 people, 4 voted that it was a violation of civil rights or constitutional rights or something like that. And then the other 5 were like, no, it's not. But in reality, they only said this because they don't want a Democratic president in the chair anymore. They're like, let's go Republicans, let's go our side, let's get Bush Jr. in the chair, right? And so Bush Jr. takes over presidency, I guess. Which, by the way, there were always jokes about him not being the smartest person because he didn't seem to be the smartest person. But yeah, Bush Jr. takes over presidency. He goes into office. From here, let's see, Bush administration. We start getting into economic recession where we start facing economic recession worse than the Great Depression. Not only that, but let me think what else. We did some other stuff. Oh yeah, and 9/11. It's gonna stop that there. Just kidding. But 9/11 is where he kind of happens during his presidency. He blames it on Saddam Hussein, which, if you look at how 9/11 works, Saddam Hussein had to be a literal genius to pull this off, man. Like you have to be a literal genius to know the way the structure of the Twin Towers was built, the way the foundation would have built, all that. Which I'm not saying he wasn't, I'm just saying it's just a little fishy there, right? Basically, he uses 9/11 as an excuse to begin to invade Iraq because he claimed that Iraq is where Saddam Hussein reside, and he claimed that Osama bin Laden. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. He claimed that Iraq was where Osama bin Laden resided, and that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction that were hidden. And basically, he used it as an excuse to go in there, take Saddam Hussein out of presidency and kind of give him up to his people, which his people hated him because he ruled with iron fist. So they basically, I think they had a public execution. They had a public hanging for him, medieval style. But yeah. So his people end up, he ended up turning his people against him on that, and the only reason he really did this, there was no weapons of mass destruction. Osama bin Laden was not in Iraq. We wasted a good amount of troops, countless lives, countless amount of people died in that war. Or yeah, in that little ordeal, countless amount of people died after it too, just because he had a personal vendetta about the fact that Saddam Hussein had tried to kill his dad, when his dad was in presidency, right? And so he took that to heart, I guess, and he was like, I'm not letting it go. You're gonna die. And it's basically what he did. Yeah, I'm not letting go. You're gonna die, which I don't think was the right action. Basically, if you look at what happens after that, this is where we get to more of guerrilla warfare in Iraq, where our troops are kind of just driving, and it's like everybody there was at war with each other. Not only that, but they were at war with the U.S. because they didn't want the U.S. there either. It's like, if we're gonna handle ourselves, we're gonna handle it without the U.S.'s help, right? So it's like our troops would literally just be driving around and boom, bomb goes off. You don't know where that bomb came off. We're so technologically advanced. We have detonators now. We have people across the city, pressing a button just to make that bomb go off. It's guerrilla warfare, right? It's a very nasty style of warfare that I don't think anybody should ever need to use. But unfortunately, made the people of Iraq feel like it was necessary. So that's what they did to our troops. Eventually, we get them out of there. Economic recession is coming on, but Bill, no, sorry. Bush, yeah, Bush. Sorry, I get my B's confused, I guess. But Bush was not going to be Henry Hoover, the Hoover Dam guy from the last Great Depression. And he was like, you know what, I'm actually going to do something to try to fix this. But instead of giving money to people and giving money to everybody so they could fund that back into the economy, he's like, you know what, I'm Republican. I'm going to give big businesses a tax break and give them. See, that's what Democrats do. Democrats just give to the people. Republicans just take from the people. And Democrats give for the people in a way that creates a really lower class of poverty and creates a class of poverty that relies on the government just to simply survive. And then Republicans kind of just let big business do whatever they want to do. It's like, y'all want to kill the earth. Y'all want to make people, y'all want to fund our education system and make them industrial workers. Go ahead, man. But yeah, basically he gives money to big corporations, big businesses, and no, to banks. That's what he does. He gives money a lot. He gives a lot of money to banks and a lot of money to people, which kind of fixed the problem, but only slightly. We're still going into a great economic recession. We're still going into a Great Depression, which I believe, honestly, look at where we're at today, guys. We're in the Great Depression, guys. We don't have the best form of living. We don't have the nicest lifestyle, but that's okay, guys. We don't need that stuff. I say all we simply need is to be able to eat healthy, live healthy, and be happy. But unfortunately, the government doesn't even let you do that with all the stuff inside our food, or chemicals, preservatives, and the way they're making it harder just to get from locally organic farms. If you look at a lot of suspicious fires that went on in a bunch of pig farms, a bunch of healthy, natural big farms, that I don't know, it's a whole big thing on itself. You can look into it yourself. But yeah, he gave money to the big banks. Banks. It's like Reaganomics. You give money to the bank. Banks give loans out to the people. People buy stuff with that money, and I guess they pay back. I don't know. It just does not make sense to me how that would fix the economic recession. But he believed it did, or someone out there believed it did, and told him to do that. But from here we get to the Obama administration, which, by the way, Obama was never meant to win his presidential election. That's why I say he's kind of a fishy president, man. If you look at who was actually meant to win, it was meant to be Hillary Clinton at the time. She was, top face of the Democrats, and I guess they were in the lead at the time. But out of nowhere, Obama goes on Oprah, gets a lot of attention, gets a lot of publicity because he's a young African American male that's in his 30s, that's doing good in politics. And Oprah's like, oh yeah, we gotta fund this man. By the way, I don't trust any rich people. Any rich people that anybody that's sponsored by rich people, they're only sponsored by those rich people because they're benefiting that rich people's money. I don't know, it's weird. But yeah, Obama gets elected to president out of nowhere, out of the blue, and basically, let's see, what do I remember from Obama? Obamacare was actually the Clintons. Their whole goal as presidents were to have universal health care. They never got that passed, so that was Hillary's whole goal as running as president. You know, but Obama beat her, so she said that or Obama was kind of starting to take the edge on her, so she said that she'd endorse Obama if he was able to implement universal health care. That's where Obamacare came from. Not only that, but right away, I think within the year, Obama goes to Afghanistan, pulls out Saddam, or not Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden. You know, we assassinate him. Everybody cheers about that, and it's like kind of, I don't know, it's weird. I don't think we should be cheering about killing someone, but. Um, yeah, so he takes him out, which shows why how the Bush administration could have really done that within their time period. They just chose not to because they had personal vendettas, or he had personal vendettas. But see who else? Or what? Yeah, Obama administration. You know, we're still going into economic recession at the time, but what he decides to do, which I believe would have fixed the problem from the very beginning, he decides to initiate the first stimulus check, which is the first check that goes back to the people, as we nowadays as our money grabber. But I forgot what it's called, or I forgot what the act is called. But basically, gave money back to us. I think it would have fixed the economic problem at the time, or at least it would have helped a lot better than what Bush did. But of course, we're still going into economic recession. Not only that, but he also a lot of the concentration camps that we have going on for my Hispanic people out there, not concentration camps, immigration camps. Sorry, very similar in my mind, I guess. But yeah, they actually a lot of them took off during the Obama administration and peaked at the Obama administration. From there, the Trump administration, they said that they weren't. I guess I'll keep going with it with some president up to Biden. Biden. But yeah, Trump administration. Trump was a decent president. I don't want to call him a good president because what he did as president is that he created more division amongst people than ever, which I think is the worst thing that you could do as a president. You should unify the people instead of just saying out of pocket things. And because, by the way, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit of a Trumpy. Some of the stuff that he said out of pocket, it was very out of pocket, but it's its own personal opinion. And some of it kind of made sense. He just needed to go into more depth and explain it, but he just didn't bother because he's Trump. But yeah, so the Trump administration, they claimed that they were shutting down those camps and trying to help them, but they really weren't. They I think they peaked on. But yeah, those camps were put there by Obama. Trump kind of fed into that, creating more division amongst people. But on the good hand, he did shut down a lot of economic trading relationships with China, because China honestly was one of the big. Oh, Bush Senior. Sorry, I forgot about this. Bush Senior. One of the big things that he did was with quote unquote war on drugs. What the government, U.S. government, and the CIA actually did is it began to push crack into urban areas and big city areas, especially areas that were more of a minority area. That's why you see a lot of if you go downtown Dallas, there are a lot more black and Mexican people there hooked on crack than there are white people. Sad truth, right? But basically, they kind of did this for their own personal gain, their own personal benefit of the government to make more money. Biggest cartel, biggest drug dealers out there are people that control everything, I guess. But yeah, one of our big importers of just illegal drugs was China. Eventually, he shut that down. He also he assassinated someone in Iran, I think. Yeah, because they were threatening to do something to us, so took him out like that. And he kind of we were at a time of peace under the Trump administration because people kind of genuinely feared him. Like Putin wasn't gonna mess with this guy. Not no offense against Putin, but Putin was like, this guy's kind of unhinged. Like I do one wrong thing, he might legit press the nuke button and just blow us all up. That's kind of President Trump was, I guess. But yeah, he was a pretty good president as far as it comes to diplomatic relationships and being a president as a whole. I don't agree with all his policies, but I think some of the stuff that he did, he couldn't necessarily fix because other people, Congress, the Senate, all that. But he also created more division amongst people than any other president, which I think is one of the worst things that you could do. You know, I like to believe division through or suppression through division. That if you always have people fighting amongst each other, you'll never realize who the enemy is and never power up. You kind of fed into that idea. So by the way, you should never have enemies. There's no such thing as an enemy out there. And the only enemy out there is the person that tries to take your life or tries to take something from you that you would need to survive. Besides that, there's no such thing as an enemy. But words of wisdom, I guess. But yeah, from there we go into the Biden administration, which we're living the Biden administration. This guy can't. This guy's reading off of a script, guys. He can't even pronounce half his words. He sniffs little girls. There's so many videos out there of this guy just going, you know, gives him a little hug and just, you know, he gives him a little rush, man. He gives him a little burst of energy. But that's what we got out of the. Or you can see what's going on with the Biden administration. You know, Ukraine, Maui, local farms. You know, COVID vaccine turned out to be a whole hump of Jeevis. Oh, a lot of just weird stuff. But it's basically my background history of what I knew of presidents and U.S. history, of recent U.S. history, and why the U.S. government isn't necessarily for the people. My greatest resolution for this issue for you people out there, because I can't just give y'all a bunch of negative stuff and not tell y'all something positive or some way to kind of be a positive person. But I believe, it's my personal belief, that's why I say I believe, but the best form of rebellion is to support your local farmers. Start looking at where your money's going and who you're spending that money on, and stop letting it support big corporations or big companies, or, you know, funding these big people that don't need funding, man. Like, stop buying your stuff from Walmart. Start, unless you truly need something in the moment, don't go to Walmart. You know, if you don't need something, you don't need it. Wait on it. But yeah, if you're gonna be getting food, start planting fruits outside. Anytime you eat something, plant it in the ground. That way, you know, hopefully we can have fruit trees one day out here. But stop littering. Stop hurting the environment, guys. Come on, like it's beautiful. What do you have against the environment? But yeah. Besides that, my form of rebellion would honestly be stop feeding into the game of society. I think that's the kind of age that we're getting into. That us as citizens, us as people, we're gonna have a rebellion. We're gonna have an uproar. We're gonna have something's gonna happen, right? We're in a state of silent war, as I like to say. But I think that truly, if we want to win this war, it needs to be a peaceful war. You know, I'm not. What's the saying in the Bible? Give. No, not that. No weapon shall prosper against me as long as I give my heart to the Lord, something like that. Basically, just live a moral life. You know, pray to God, pray to Buddha, pray to whoever you want to be pray to. Just make sure everything that you're doing is a positive action. It doesn't have a negative reaction. And think about what that negative or what that reaction of that action could. Cat inside. That man went inside. Why he got inside? I guess the door's open. But sorry. Yeah, make sure every action's a positive action. Think about every reaction. Every action has a reaction. Think about that reaction. Think that if it's going to be a negative, positive reaction, it's a negative. You don't need that action. Just be a good person, man. And I think one day, whenever it's time, whenever people finally have the ability to stop playing into the game of society, you know, we can go outside, we can pick fruit from trees and stuff like that. I say, do what the rebels already are doing. I think we already have rebels out here. I think the true rebels of the society are the homeless people that are homeless by choice. They've just stopped playing the game. That's what it is. Society's nothing but a game where we're players, we're benefiters to big corporations, and they decided to, you know, stop benefiting these people. They might still work for them because, you know, that's what they have to do to survive. But they're just doing what they have to do to survive. They're not feeding into the game of corporations. Even homeless people that are on the streets like crackheads, you know, that you look at them and you call them a bum. They're not bums. They just decided, like, hey, life is fucked up. Everything around me is fucked up. I'm not going to be a part of this. They may have, you know, they may have done a lot of negativity to themselves, but it's because they're surrounded by nothing but negativity. And are we all? And I don't say just go out there and start doing crack or something like that. I say, no, man, just stop playing into the world of society. if start supporting small mom and pop shops, start supporting small businesses, start becoming a young entrepreneur, start educating yourself. You know, you can watch my video with a great, amazing professor on systematic oppression and how you can break free from it. I'll try to get some more videos up like that, some more educational, informative stuff like that. But but yeah, stop playing this game. And I say the true rebellers out there, or the true people that are living by good moral standards, are the people that seek that seek freedom, not above all, but seek that they prioritize freedom. But above all, they seek the welfare of others. That's what a true good rebellion or warrior does. They seek the welfare of others, not just themselves. It's like if I'm gonna be I'm gonna be telling y'all to go homeless, I'm gonna have to go homeless myself. Like I can't be sitting here telling y'all to do something that I'm not even willing to do myself. You know, it's like when a rich person asks you to donate money, why are you gonna donate money if they're not even donating money? It's like if you're asking if a rich person is asking to fund their charity, it's like they're not even funding it. Like why would you fund it? By the way, corporations, people, and big businesses, they get a big tax write-off by starting charities, by starting nonprofit organizations, and by simply doing donations. So anytime I ask you at Walmart, you know, any job, Big Lots, Target, anything like that, if you want to donate, that donation is not falling under your name or your registry. That corporation is actually going to put that donation under their name. You know, everybody's donation, they're going to use that as a big tax write-off. That's how they get away with paying some of their taxes. Yeah, keep that in mind. Learn stuff like this, like learn stuff that can be useful. Learn how the system works and learn how to break free from the system. Best thing I can tell y'all. I'll try to get some more videos on how the system works, I guess. But hope y'all enjoyed this video. Hope it was educational. Hope y'all have a great night. Peace.